We'll now speak about teamwork, very important for survival. Studies about team cohesive exist, but more attention is paid to long-term performance. That is why Dr. Sherman will talk about the new effectiveness model.
Team and team's performances. So, would you please join me on the stage? Thank you very much.
You want me to hold this? That's good. Okay. And does this go? No, this doesn't. This does? Okay. And you can keep me on time. You know, he's impossible, you know. Hello, everyone. Look, thank you for having me here today. Thanks for sticking around. You know, now that we've got the warm-up act out of the way, it's time for the main show. Congratulations, Rasta, 20 years, well, 21 now, but congratulations. Really great to be here. Thanks for having us here for this. So I'm going to talk about team effectiveness. I'm going to try to stay within my time bounds. This is what I'm going to be covering today. Look, the big picture is this. At Hogan, we've been studying personality for a really long time. It's my position that we pretty much have individuals figured out. We know what makes individuals, everything there is to know about individuals. If you want to know about individuals, we got 28 main scales, we got a whole bunch of subscales. This is pretty much all you need to know about individuals. We also know an awful lot about leadership. You just saw that. I think we've pretty much solved the problem of leadership effectiveness. One of the big questions that kind of remains is teams, and Hogan's not the only one. We've looked at teams for a long time. Some years ago, Google published an article. It was in a big news outlet, I forget which one, but it was very widely read, where it basically said Google is solving teams. And then you read the article to find out Google said, well, we tried and we didn't really solve teams. So here is Hogan's effort at solving teams. That's where I think the next big thing is in understanding teams. And obviously, team performance is related to leadership, as Dr. Hogan just described. So I'm going to start with an observation here, and that is what I call humans are squishy. So we don't have sharp teeth. We don't have sharp claws. We can't fly. We're not particularly strong. We don't have a strong bite. And we're not very fast. So the individual human sort of left alone in the wild is a tasty snack. Yet, we are the most deadly and invasive species on Earth. We seem pretty well poised to destroy the whole thing if we keep going, so I guess that's nice. We're the sort of apex creature on the planet. So how do you explain that if we're so squishy? That's the question that we really have. How is it that the individual human, so kind of pathetic, is somehow at the top? And the answer is group living, of course. That's the whole point of the talk is about teams and group living. Now, we're not the only creature that lives in groups. You know, ants live in groups, chimpanzees live in groups. But there's some of those things that make humans unique, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So what are the real essential features of group living? So the first is that we can coordinate our activities via language. Now, again, other species have language. Our language seems to be, we seem to be much more efficient at how we use language to coordinate our group activities. So that's really important. Obviously, you can't build the pyramids unless you tell people, you know, what to do. Using that same analogy, we have roles and division of labor, right? So, you know, we say, you go do this and you do that, and everybody decides what their roles is. And this is true, and as Dr. Hogan mentioned earlier, this is true in athletics. This is one reason why I think athletics is a really nice venue for studying human performance, because we have these kinds of things. You have to communicate, you have to coordinate, you have different roles, different people have to do different jobs. And that requires someone to be in charge. That requires someone to say, okay, you do this, you do that, and this is how we're going to do it, and let's communicate and all agree on how we're going to perform. So this is what's really set humans apart, right? Our ability to live together and to coordinate our activities is what's taken humans to where we are today. Now, anytime you talk about teams, you're sort of obligated to define what's the difference between groups and teams. So this is the sort of obligatory definition. Groups are 2 or more individuals, just people 2 standing around at the bus stop. And a team is some work group where your results depend on how I perform. Right? That's what we mean by interdependent. So whatever you do impacts me, and whatever I do impacts you. Now, when we look at the literature on team performance, or just teams in general, there's a whole lot of literature around team cohesion, liking, and satisfaction. So that's really easy to study. If I put a bunch of people together and I say, how did that go? How did that team event that you just did go? Do you like each other? Were you cohesive? Really easy to do research that way, so there's a lot of data on that. There's a lot less data on team performance. There is some, and I'm going to talk about that. But there's less data on team performance because that's often harder to measure. It's often harder to measure the team performance outcomes. But there's some literature, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Before I get into that, and I never know if this is going to work. I don't know if anyone tested it, so it's always a fun surprise to see if this sound works or not. I'm going to show you this video clip here, hopefully.
But we also know you 3 kings came down here to win championships. Not 1, championships.
Not 2.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7. Hey, and when I say that, I really believe it.
All right, so thanks to the assessment systems folks for checking that and making sure it worked without talking to me. Good job. Look, this is from when LeBron James, you all probably know who LeBron James is, he's pretty famous, right? And he went to the Miami Heat and joined 2 other very superstar talented players. Arguably, they had the 3 most talented basketball players in the NBA on the same team. And it was sort of a foregone conclusion that they were going to win championship after championship. And this was a hype-up session, right, where they're all going to get together and talk about how great they're going to be. And, LeBron said, not 2, not 3, not 4, right? Well, they won 2. They won 2 championships. They got to the finals 4 times, but only won 2. And they had the most talent. Everybody agreed they had the most talent. And I don't want to pick on LeBron James too much, but he's currently on a team called the Los Angeles Lakers. And they've had a lot of talent over the last several years. Like many of these players are all-stars. And this last year, they went 33-49 and did not make the playoffs. Now, I'm using 2 basketball examples. I'm absolutely certain there are football examples or any other activity you want to put together. The point here is that just getting talent together isn't enough. There's a lot more to team performance besides just getting talent. Okay, so what did we actually do? My team went and did a comprehensive literature review of team effectiveness, and we identified 15 review articles. So this isn't 15 individual studies. These are 15 articles reviewing the literature on team performance and team effectiveness. So we got those 15 articles, and we identified 12 models of team performance and team effectiveness. Now, I should say we focused on top-of-the-house teams, C-suite teams, when we did this review. And these 12 models come from consulting firms, major firms that you've all heard of. And what we did is we identified nearly 200 different terms related to team effectiveness. Right? That is, these models, these review papers said, this is what effective teams do. Now, as you might imagine, these 200 terms weren't all unique. Many of them overlapped. So Kimberly, myself, and several others met for a couple of weeks. And we wrote down all of these terms on index cards, and we wrote down their definition on an index card. And then we said, wait, these are the same, and we put them together. And we did that until we left ourselves with 27 independent terms, and we further clustered those into 5 higher-order themes, which I'm going to show you right now. So these are the 5 themes that we identified as being related to team effectiveness. So the first is trust. The second is team norms. The third is mission alignment. The fourth is results focus. And the fifth one is strategic adaptability. And I want to point out again, does this work? Yeah. That we really focused on senior leadership teams. So this is top of the house stuff. We have applications for lower level teams, but mostly we started at senior level teams here. I'll also point out that there are 3 sub-themes: composition norms, interpersonal norms, and operational norms, and I'll talk about how those are a little bit different here in a second. So I'm going to highlight each of these, and what I'm going to be putting up here are the individual factors. I probably won't go over them all in the interest of time, and I don't want anyone to cry from boredom, so I won't highlight them all. So the first one is trust. Every single model you look at talks about trust. Trust is really important, and the funny thing about trust is you can't just put a team together and say, trust each other, right? So trust is this emergent property that comes from competence, dependability, right? We can depend on each other. I counted on you before, and you came through for me. Fairness, right? Treating each other fairly and holding each other accountable. So we know that high-performing teams all have to trust each other, but to get there requires them doing a whole bunch of things to build that trust. So the trust is this emergent property. If your team doesn't have trust, doomed. It's the same thing in any relationship, though, right? So if you don't trust your business partner, your business is going to fail. If you don't trust your spouse, you know, it's not going to work out. Okay, so the second is composition norms, and I won't go over all these, but this is basically, does your team have the right structure? Do you have the right people on the team? Do people know what they're supposed to be doing? And do you have the right talent? So talent is part of it. That's all this individual differences stuff. That's the kind of stuff that we assess. Right? Do you have the right talent? Is a part of team success. Interpersonal norms concerns how the team interacts with each other. So how is conflict handled? Conflict is okay, but it has to be healthy. It can't be personal. You can't have personal vendettas against each other. You have to, when you communicate with each other, you have to focus on substance and the goals and what you're trying to finish. You can't exclude people, and you all have to be agreeing to work together to solve problems. The third one is operational norms. So this concerns how the team actually sort of functions in terms of the business function. One of the big things here, and this is something I pointed out earlier, is shared language. Every business you've been in, every team you've worked on has some language. You probably, in your own organizations, have certain words that mean certain things that in other organizations don't mean anything, right? So you have to have this shared language to communicate. And then there's clear processes for how information is shared and how decisions are made. And the big one is mission alignment. There's a whole bunch of things that show up here, but this is really, do we know what we're supposed to be doing? Do we all agree that we're supposed to be doing that thing? Does this thing go beyond us as individuals? Is this about something bigger than our own self-achievement? This is about the team accomplishment, not our individual achievement. Do we have the support from people above us? I mentioned leader of leaders here. This is, again, particular to C-suite teams. The CEO is very unique, and that the people they're leading are usually leaders themselves. Those people are used to being in charge, and someone's in charge of them. And so it's much trickier to navigate that, and it's a really critical part of C-suite team success. Moving on to the results focus dimension, this is really about getting things done, achieving results, holding each other accountable, listening to other people to get feedback to try to get better. Oh, sorry. I will allow for the photo. And the last one is strategic adaptability. Strategic adaptability, again, this is one that was really central to C-suite teams. Was not as critical for lower level teams, but it could be under certain circumstances. But in C-suite teams, this emerges really important. It's about being future-oriented. It's about being strategic, not tactical. It's about being willing to change, willing to take chances, to try things that might not work, are really critical if you want your business to grow, to expand, and to continue to thrive. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about a few applications that we have actually done with this model. So this is our model of team effectiveness, and we've actually put this into practice in a few pilot cases that I think are pretty useful. So the first thing I'll point out is that each of these dimensions can actually be linked to particular behaviors that the team engages in, which, not surprisingly, are linked to the personalities of the individuals on the teams. So we look at trust, for example. We've mapped this to our Hogan competency model. We've got 62 behavioral competencies that sort of cover the landscape of competencies in the workplace. These are two of them that map to trust, integrity. Do you keep your word? You don't double deal? And can you build effective relationships? If you do those things, your team will eventually build trust. And those map to, that is, we can measure the likelihood that you engage in these behaviors with these personality characteristics. So these come from the HPI, the HDS, and the MVPI. You're probably familiar with those. You may be asking, what is this? It turns out if you're too high on interpersonal, this is curvilinear. That's what we're saying. Okay. If you're too high on interpersonal sensitivity, that can be just as problematic because you can be too focused on that relationship building that you actually lose some integrity because you're not being honest with people because you're trying to be too nice. Okay, we've done this for all of them. I'm not going to go through all of them because, again, it's too much and it's boring and, okay, but the point is, what I have here on the slides, and you can have the slides, is all of the competencies, and then, of course, we have these mapped to behaviors. Now, I'm not going to allow you to take a photo of all of them because I'll just send you the slides. I'm sorry. I promise you can have the slides, but I'm going to move quickly because I don't want to take up too much time. Okay, so we have it for all of them. Okay, operational norms like this and this. Okay, okay. We have them all. Right. I mean, like, look, this looks like strategic adaptability. Okay, that's the point, is that we have all of them and they're all mapped to our personality skills. And again, I put them on there just so we can send you the slides and you can have them. Okay. How can we actually apply this to an actual business? So this is a team that we worked with, and they answered a whole bunch of questions. It's 27 questions on the assessment, assessing the team, right, on these dimensions. And you can see here the little rhombuses or sideways squares that's where the team average was on that dimension. The dots are the individuals, right, where the individuals scored. And some dots overlap, and so the dot gets darker when there's more dots there, when there's more individuals on that point. So a couple of things that stand out about this team. One is this team scores a little lower on team norms. This team scores a little lower on results focus. So if I was doing consulting with this team, that's probably an area I would look at. I would look a little deeper into what exactly is it about team norms that's not going well, and I'll show some hints at that here in a minute. I would also note that there's a lot of variability here on trust, even though most people are pretty high. There's one person who stands out down here that's a little low, and I might wonder what's going on there. So if I'm doing a consulting engagement, that would be the kinds of things I would be looking at that might be affecting this team's performance. Now, one of the things that we do know is that all of these things are related to team performance. If you don't have these things, your team does worse. What we don't know yet is which ones are most important. Some might be more important, some are almost certainly more important than others. We don't empirically know which ones are more, we can guess, but I don't empirically know which ones are more important yet. So just a little bit more about the application. Here we can see this is one of the items. The team has a clear succession plan for when a team member leaves. This particular team that we were working with did not. They did not have a good succession plan. That was an issue for them. So if I was, again, consulting with this team, that's something I would talk to the leader about. I would pull the leader aside, say, hey, look, it looks like you guys don't have a succession plan. You need to put one in place if you want to be more effective, if you want to be more successful. You can also see things like there's some disagreement about whether or not the team is strategic or tactical. Right? That would be something I would be focusing on with this team as well. I'm going to make one final point here, and then I think am I behaving? Okay, good. All right. Which is that at the end of the day, leadership is what's really critical for team success. Dr. Hogan talked about leadership as a resource for the group, and team performance is the way to evaluate leadership, and that's really true here. And what we found in our engagements with folks doing this is that often a lot of the team engagement is actually done with the leader. Where you talk about the leader, how do you need to restructure the team, what kinds of things they need to do to be more effective. The other thing that we found is you can't just have a team assess on our tool and say, here's your report, see you later. Like, it really takes a skilled consultant to look at the team results, to look at something like the Leadership Forecast series of reports, the HPI, the HDS, the MVPI, put that all together to convey the story of what's really happening with this team to help that team be more effective. And I'm going to show a graphic here that I'm not going to talk about. Sorry. Okay, it's gone. Okay, so in summary, look, humans have always worked in teams. Team effectiveness is really critical if we want to survive, both historically and today, literally and figuratively. Most research on teams ignores effectiveness. We actually have a pretty useful model of team effectiveness that seems to be working. And at the end of the day, team effectiveness is all about leadership effectiveness. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? I can't see any hand above, so I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.